the target. You are authorized to fire at will.
Hey, I need you guys to start sharing this out. Um, I'm having a bad night. I'm fixing to get real emotional. So if if you don't watch anything else that I do, if you don't watch any other content that I ever put out, I don't care if you walk away from my channel. And don't look back after tonight. I just need you guys to help me. I need this pushed out to everybody in the accountability community. I need every cop watching, First Amendment auditing, pro police reform, pro justice reform person in the community. I need them all to see this. I need you guys to help. You see, in my near 13-year career as a deputy inside of a detention center, I met a lot of people. I met a lot of individuals that most of you would refer to as dirtbags. I met a lot of people who deserve to get locked up and never get let out again for a lot of the things that they did. And I met a lot of people who just made a really lot of just a lot of bad life choices. And I met a lot of people who really wanted to make a change in their life. And there was one young man, and I didn't even know at the time when I was interacting with him. His name's Chase Johnston, and I had no idea at the time that I was interacting with him that I was having an impact on his life. And when I announced the end of my fight with the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office and the fact that I was no longer working in the capacity of a deputy inside the detention center, I did a live stream to Facebook that I then downloaded and put up on YouTube here. It's called The Burn. And in that video, I burned all my uniforms. And each one of the remaining uniforms that I had that I burned, I dedicated to a different individual who had betrayed me inside of the sheriff's office. And Chase saw that video. Somebody had shared it with him, and he messaged me, and we began to develop a friendship. And Chase regaled me with the story that probably was one of the most touching things that had ever happened in my life. See, Chase told me that on the morning that he was going to prison, I was in the housing unit that he was assigned to. I was a deputy working that housing unit, and I was tasked with packing him up and escorting him up to booking to change over for transportation to prison. And I don't remember that moment, but Chase did, and he reminded me that I prayed for him and told him to do his time and get out of prison and make a difference. And that's what he did. He got out of prison and he worked on changing his life. He made some mistakes. He made more mistakes, and um, couldn't learn not to drink. Um, TC says ironically as he drinks. Chase caught himself a DUI, but he also came out of prison with a passion for protecting kids. And he had, in the link to my conversation with Chase about what motivated him is in the description of this video. If one of the moderators could go and find that, that would be super chill. I'd really appreciate that. But Chase decided he was going to do what Chris Hansen has been doing on NBC on Dateline for years, and he decided he was going to do his own To Catch Predator channel on YouTube in the Rochester, Minnesota area, and he was pretty successful. I think between the people he collabed with and himself, I think they exposed 15 or more child predators, and one of those was a former coworker of mine, um, a former deputy, and his name was is Matt Adamson, and Chase caught Matt Adamson, and that was what I had him on the show to talk about, was the fact that in 2022 he caught Deputy Matt Adamson attempting to meet an underage girl, a girl that he thought was underage, in exchange for sex, or to exchange sex for alcohol. And he sent me the pictures and he says, "Hey, is this who I think it is?" And I said, "Yeah, that is Deputy Matt Adamson of the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office. You need to take all your evidence and turn it over to the Rochester Police Department." And that's what he did. And as we now know, many of you have been following me for a while. That went nowhere. And it was only after a year and a half of being free to continue his activities that Deputy Matt Adamson was caught by accident by the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension in November of last year under the watchful eye of Sheriff Kevin Torgerson. And when that story broke, we did our story, and local media began to cover Chase, and they labeled him a vigilante. And Olmsted County Attorney Mark Ostrom, sleazeball that he is, labeled Chase a vigilante as well, and said that he, had basically admitted that he was never going to use any of the evidence that Chase ever presented because he didn't like Chase's tactics and he thought that Chase was dangerous, and made it clear that Chase was the problem. While he turns around and says things like, I don't like to send sex offenders to prison because they don't get the help that they need in prison. Well, July 23rd of 2023, Chase caught a man named Pacin, Richard Pacin, in a sting. Chase posed as a boy named Ben, and he put a profile for Ben on Grindr, which, if you don't know what Grindr is a hookup app for homosexuals. There are hookup apps for everybody out there now. I mean, I don't care what it is you're into. There are hookup apps for everyone. I mean, farmersonly.com is a hookup app for people with a farmer fetish. Let's just be honest. That's what it is. But Chase put this profile up on the hookup app Grindr, posing as Ben. And Richard Pacin reached out to Ben. And Richard Pacin began to interact with Ben, who of course was Chase. And they eventually started to have, Pacin eventually started to have a very explicit sexual conversation with Chase, sent him a picture of his junk, and then said, "Hey, do you host?" And I'm breaking this all down to the just the bare bones, because I'm going to be doing a breakdown video of Chase's video confrontation with Pacin. But in that conversation, Pacin offered marijuana to Ben, talked about filming rough sex with Ben, and then they made plans to meet, and Chase told him that Ben was actually 16 and basically lived on his own because his mom was a meth head and abandoned him. And Pacin still drove all the way from Owatonna, Minnesota. So it's about let's say roughly an hour drive. He drove all the way from Owatonna, Minnesota to Rochester to Chase's apartment building, where he was confronted by Chase and his significant other in the lobby of the apartment building. Push comes to shove, Richard Pacin is a convicted sex offender. He has several felonies under his belt. Richard Pacin engaged in sexual conduct and content with a known male child on multiple occasions over an extended period of time. Conduct included showing victim pornographic material. Contact included sexual touching and penetration. Pacin provided him with intoxicants. This is the man that was meeting with a boy who Ben told him, I'm 16. And that's who Chase and his significant other confronted in the lobby of their apartment building. And this man eventually called law enforcement, called Rochester, Minnesota Police Department. The Rochester, Minnesota Police Department showed up on scene, separated them, And like I said, I am going to be doing a breakdown video of the video confrontation between Chase and Richard Pacin as soon as I can get that. And I'm working on getting that. I have seen it. Sergeant Ben Schlegg of the Rochester, Minnesota Police Department showed up on scene and then eventually ended up arresting Chase, charging him with false imprisonment, and then ultimately charging him with assault and also with felony stalking. Chase went to trial this week on those charges. They offered him a plea deal, and Chase said, "No, I didn't do anything wrong. I was catching predators. I was helping my community." And so they took it in for trial. And I was able to, on Tuesday, sit down for a while. Excuse me, was it Tuesday? No, it was Wednesday. I was able to sit in on Wednesday for a good portion of the question of the testimony of Mr. Pacin, who's the victim here. The victim. This man who has a felony conviction for a protracted amount of sexual interactions with a minor boy is the victim in this situation because Olmsted County, Minnesota County Attorney Mark Ostrom protects predators and victimizes the people who catch them. On the stand, Richard Pacin admitted that he was told that Ben was 16. Admitted that. He admitted to wanting to have rough sex with Ben. He admitted to bringing marijuana along to give to Ben. He admitted that he had said that he wanted to videotape that. And on the stand, when he was questioned, he said, "Well, I changed my mind about some of it because, like, video is child pornography and that's illegal." He admitted that. He admitted on the stand as the victim. As the victim, folks, I want this to sink in. As the victim. He admitted that it was worth the risk for him to drive nearly an hour from Owatonna, Minnesota to Rochester, Minnesota to have sex with a 16-year-old. He admitted that it was worth the risk for him. He admitted it. And at one point in the interaction between Chase and Pacin, a vehicle drives by and they stay. Is this a guy that somebody says the predator? Drove by in the parking lot and they said maybe we ought to get out and do some things to this guy. And Chase says, "No, don't do that. The cops are already on their way." Chase prevented people from hurting this man. I want you guys to let this sink in. Chase prevented a van full of people who were upset that this adult male with with convictions for pederasty prevented people from doing him harm, spoke against doing him harm. I think I'm saying his name wrong too. I think it might be Pecan, but it's spelled Pequin. So he said on the stand that he was so traumatized by this event that it caused him PTSD. It triggered PTSD in him. I wonder if he's ever had to apologize to his victim and the PTSD he probably caused in that child. But we're supposed to have sympathy for a predator who gets caught in the act of trying to predate somebody who he knew was 16. And his excuse was, well, I didn't really believe he was 16. So today, closing arguments were made. The jury was given their charge. And at approximately, I'd say probably around 7:30ish, I was informed at 7:44 by Chase's significant other that the jury came back with guilty verdicts on Chase. Chase was remanded into custody with no bond. He's facing 10 years in prison. His sentencing is scheduled for November. He has a very young daughter who, if Chase gets the sentence that I know the prosecution will push for, will herself be almost 16 years old by the time Chase's sentence is up. A young lady is going to grow up without her dad. Because we have a system in southeast Minnesota in particular, in Olmsted County especially, with Mark Ostrom in particular, that will bend over backwards to protect the predators. From being exposed. That will bend over backwards to keep the predators from having to do any kind of serious time. Now, you may be saying to yourself, hey, TC, why is this so important to you? You might be saying to yourself, but the evidence, they Chase and his significant other have all the evidence, right? They have all the evidence, right? They must have all the evidence, and they did. They have all the evidence. You want to know, like maybe you wouldn't believe me, and I can understand that some of you don't know me, but maybe some of you don't believe me. But the evidence was all presented in the court. The evidence was presented in the court that showed what Richard Pecan or Pecan, whatever his name is, whatever this predator from Owatonna, Minnesota, who I believe is a level 3 sex offender, a registered sex offender, and or was a registered sex offender. These are all, I don't know all the ins and outs. I'm working on getting all the details. We're going to do an in-depth story about this guy and his history. All the evidence was available for Rochester, Minnesota Police Department. If they wanted to charge Chase, or since they were going to charge Chase, they could charge Paquin. They could charge him. They could charge him. They had all the evidence. We know they had all the evidence because all the evidence was presented by the prosecution in court against Chase. The evidence that was there that damns Richard Pacin, also used against Chase, could have been used against Pacin. Could have been used against him to charge him. He didn't get charged. He wasn't charged. No charges. None. None at all. So a guy who drove an hour from Owatonna to Rochester, Roadhog Kennel, they didn't even have to give him immunity because they never charged him. They never filed charges on him, ever. Sergeant Ben Schlegg, who made the decision to charge Chase, also, or to arrest Chase and haul him in so that he could be charged, also chose to let the predator go after he drove an hour, basically, to meet with an underage boy and give him weed to engage in sex with him. Let that sink in. They had all the evidence. It was all there. They had everything they needed. And they let him go. Now, I have a researcher who's going to be pulling up as much as she can on this for me. The victim was 10. Brian, I'm glad to see you here. Brian from Here's the Deal is here. Brian's a little bit familiar with this case. We talked a little bit about Chase, and I told Chase, Chase, your tactics are crap. You are way too vulgar, and I do have to laugh because it's one of the things that Chase has said. He realized he's got to tone it down, but he's going to prison. You don't have to like Chase's tactics. You don't have, and I told him this, like, Chase, I can't, like, I would love to work with you, but I can't do what you're doing. He was kind of an ass. But being an ass isn't illegal. Being vulgar isn't illegal. Being a jerk isn't illegal. You know what's illegal? Attempting to meet with underage children for sex is illegal. That's illegal. And today, in a courtroom in front of his friends and his family, Chase was taken into custody and remanded into the Olmsted County Adult Detention Center with no bond until his sentencing in November for trying to protect children in his flawed way, trying to protect children while the person who was there to victimize children is out there roaming the streets free today. And and I want to juxtapose this. I really need to juxtapose this because the Olmsted County Attorney's Office, who is charging Chase, are the same office that charged Trooper Shane Roper. The connections never end. Brian, you're going to love this. Everybody else is going to really, really love this. Chase caught a man from Owatonna, Minnesota, trying to have sex with an underage boy. Is now sitting in jail. As of this very moment, is sitting in the Olmsted County Adult Detention Center, no bond. He did no harm to anyone. Trooper Shane Roper murdered Olivia Flores, who was from Owatonna, Minnesota, on May 18th. Has never been in a jail, still has no mugshot, and is out without a bond. Let that sink in. Chase Johnston caught a person who was actually a criminal trying to meet with children for sex, did no harm to this man, to this jerk, to this pervert, is sitting in jail right now until November when his sentencing happens. No bond, no chance of getting out, and no one was hurt. Trooper Shane Roper murdered a girl on May 18th and is free until his trial at the end of March. No bond, no mugshot. Brian, I think that's a great question. I don't know that there's. I'm sorry. Excuse me for a minute. I shouldn't have done this tonight. See, I love this kid. We can't do anything for Chase right now. He's where he is. But Julia, his significant other, is probably going to need some help. And his little girl is going to need some help. I cannot fathom, I cannot grasp. If there's anybody out there that's good with no, I don't think we ever actually got around to getting one set up, and for the life of me, I don't know the first thing about getting those things set up. So if there's anybody that's good at that stuff, let me know. Sorry, I'm getting it pulled back together. I just I cannot fathom right now the idea that a convicted sex offender who repeatedly abused a 10-year-old boy over the course of several years, was the brother of a girlfriend, could attempt to meet with someone that he believed to be 16, could walk free, go back to his hometown of Owatonna, and then we can watch as Chase gets, metaphorically watch as Chase gets hauled away into to prison without any chance of a bond between now and his sentencing, and definitely not after sentencing. With no bond. Well, a trooper who actually murdered someone, killed a young girl, an 18-year-old girl, weeks away from her graduation, is walking around free without a bond. This is what's wrong with Olmsted County Attorney Mark Ostrom. This is what he does. This is what I've been telling people. He's dirty. He's corrupt. And in the bond they did ask for on Roper was asinine, and they agreed. They agreed to the no bond to be released on his own recognizance with stipulations of no contact with the victim and no driving without insurance. Uh, my researcher is going to try and get the transcripts from the trial. I think on Monday. I don't know how much that's going to cost. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't have the money to pay for that kind of stuff. Um, I'm working on getting the video, that a set of video to show you all of the places where, there again, Chase's behavior. He's already said he knows that he came off as an ass. I no arguments there. Um, but we're going to show how it was clear why the guy was there, and that they had every opportunity to charge both of them. If they were going to charge anybody, they could have charged both of them, and they chose to charge Chase and let the actual pervert offender with a history go. I've got more information coming in from my researcher. Uh, it was 6 years. 6 years that Richard Pacin victimized his victim. 6 years. And marijuana was heavily involved. And the night that Chase caught him, busted him, he had marijuana on him. And I don't care what your views are on marijuana. At the time, it wasn't legal in Minnesota, and it certainly wasn't legal for him to be offering it to somebody under the age of 18. When we get the transcripts, they will be going up. But in the meantime, if anybody can help me figure out a way to help Julia and her daughter, Chase's daughter, I would love that. Brian, if you're still here and there's a way that you think you can cover this story, um, I'd be more than willing to feed you any information that you need. I'm not going to stretch this out much longer, but I just want that to sink in. The same county attorney who's charged Chase and is letting him go into not letting him go, but sending him into prison, no bond, until his sentencing in November. Also let a sexual predator go. And also let Trooper Shane Roper go without ever spending even a minute in jail to get booked in, a mugshot, or get a bond. And people want to talk to me about how the justice system isn't broken. Folks, I appreciate everybody that's tuned in. If you haven't yet, like I said, if you don't watch anything else that I do, watch my conversation with Chase. Watch this video and share it. Let's see if we can do something for Julia and the little girl. Because they're going to need it. 10 years is a really long time. For a little girl to be without her daddy. Sorry for the breakdowns. I really, really care about Chase. He's a hero. He's just a hero with an attitude. He didn't deserve this. And this is how sick the system is. They protected Deputy Matt Adamson for a year and a half, letting him victimize more and more people. They protected Richard Pacin. Let him go. They protected Trooper Shane Roper. They let him go. And now Julia is without her significant other, and their daughter's without her daddy.